Part 12. The Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. The opening scene is one of the few examples of, well, maybe not subtle writing, but it's certainly less in your face about stuff. The lords basically ask Farkas indirectly to tell their families what happened to them if they don't come back. Except Hector, because he doesn't have a family anymore. But the problem here is that there's no need for Farkas to be the one to deliver this message. He has a whole crew of people who can do that, and he was willing to join up with them. We know he's a serious badass, because both the story and his stats reflect that, so there's really no good reason for him not to join at this point. Plus, you'd think they'd pick a better candidate. I mean, Farkas is a fucking pirate, and he looks the part too. The lords didn't think anyone would believe their story before, even when told by authoritative figures like Pent, Uther, the lords themselves. So how is Farkas going to convince anyone? If anything, they probably assume he killed the lords. And this isn't even getting into the fact that they don't seem to consider the possibility of them just outright losing. Seriously, Pent should have sent a missive to the King of Etruria at this point. But I guess they know that with the power of friendship they will prevail. Or maybe the divine weapons. Oh wait, they handed those to Athos. And then they just dump Nils on Farkas. Why was Nils tagging along anyway? I'm pretty sure they don't know that Nergal doesn't need a dragon anymore to summon more dragons, so it seems ridiculously risky to bring him to an island where Nergal is. At least they don't take him to Nergal, but leaving it with some pirate on the shores isn't all that much safer. Why didn't Athos just take him to Arcadia or something? Depending on how much you respect the script at this point, you can choose whether or not the fact that Farkas sends Nils off with them to deliver the stupid Earth Seal is again a small subtle moment where he's aware that Nils wants to go with him, and so he just gives him an excuse, or you can just say Farkas is an idiot. It's your call. Meanwhile, in the bad guy's lair, Nergal and Limstella are talking. Nergal juices up Limstella with superpower magic, which is another tick of Nergal's long list of powers that he almost never uses when he should. The only other person he used this on was Vida. Also, remember that this almost certainly costs extra quintessence, something Nergal says he needs more of. Back to our heroes. Hector is having an oh shit moment, because they don't have the divine weapons anymore, because they gave him the Athos. So he just had to sit there and wait. Oh good, Nils had a bad feeling.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this.
Just in time to save Eliwood from death. Limstella quietly waits for them to go through their reunion lines before coming out of hiding when Nils calls to her. As is tradition, she announces herself before spawning a horde of generic enemies for lords to fight through. Now, Nils mentions that Nergal hasn't summoned dragons yet, which I assume means he can sense the presence of other dragons, so I guess that's not a feature on our radar system. Sophia is in one of the villages, and like I said before, that makes no fucking sense. How did she get there anyway? Isn't it really hard to get to the Dread Isle? Did she travel alone? Aren't they supposed to not go outside? How did she know how to get there? Also, Renault joins. He has a pretty interesting backstory by FE7 standards, but you have to sit around forever to unlock it, and not just one, but in 3 maps, which is tedious as fuck. And that's really all there is to say about him. After Limstella is dead, and they're standing in front of the entrance, Eliwood is like, "Hey Nils, before we move into the super time-sensitive objective of killing the main bad guy before he destroys the world or something, why don't you go ahead and dump your whole backstory on us?" And Nils is like, "Sure, let's do this. Gee, this seems familiar." You know, Eliwood, maybe you should have asked about this 10 chapters ago, when they were talking about how Nergal needed them to summon dragons. Anyhow, there's a lot of information in here, and technically I've referred to it a few times already, because it has pertinent information to disseminating plot points earlier, and I didn't want to have to wait until now to address all of them. It's bad enough with Nergal. So here's a summary. The two of them left alive through the Dragon's Gate after the Scouring, 1,000 years ago. They made a home on the opposite side with their fellow dragons, and things were okay, but they kinda missed their old place. At some point, when thinking back of alive, they heard a voice that they were familiar with, but didn't entirely recognize. That voice belonged to Nergal, their father. Presumably they didn't remember him properly, due to how long it had been since they'd last met him. Either way, Nergal successfully coaxed them into coming back through the Dragon's Gate. Upon passing through, they were severely weakened, and forced to take human form. placing their energy into the Dragonstone. Nergal stole the Dragonstone in order to use it to summon other dragons in combination with the two. However, they escaped and ended up with Lyn. And then after Lyn's retaking of Kaelin, they got captured again and met Albert, whose stories of Eliwood helped them keep their will to survive whilst imprisoned. And then they had a good feeling.
I got a really good feeling about this.
About Eliwood saving them all, because this game loves pulling stupid bullshit like that. And then to wrap things up, Eliwood pulls a line out of the spiky-haired kid's anime protagonist's handbook about the power of friendship. Boring. Boring. Okay, fine. As if we didn't waste enough time already with Nils' show and tell, the lords decide it's a good idea to go check out some old ruins they find on their way to the Dragon's Gate. Why? Because they could be attacked from the rear. I'd be more worried about the whole dragon summoning thing that's about to happen personally. This is about as much of a waste of their time as it is for me to analyze this chapter to begin with, but I guess we'll go over it briefly for completion's sake. Just like the last two times we saw Kashuna, this chapter adds nothing to the game's story whatsoever. It's only here to make the game look mysterious. The only connection it has to anything is that it's part of the requirements needed to trigger Nergal's fully extended death quote in the final chapter. But what's supposed to be the logic behind that? None of Kashuna's chapters have anything to do with Einar, that's 19XX, which admittedly is accessed through a Kashuna guidance, but that doesn't really mean anything. Then there's that whole Renault shit. Some people think Renault's friend, who was turned into the first morph Nergal made, is Kashuna, but the script makes it pretty clear that Kashuna was made after many other morphs due to the reference to numbering, so that's just stupid. Some of the better theories I've read talk about how maybe he was a Manakete or something, cause he kinda looks like one. Maybe Nergal was gonna use him to fight the dragons or something, but it backfired and he disowned because of the unintentional magic seal effect, and... Wait, why am I talking about this? Fuck! I got suckered into the travel speculation about this irrelevant bullshit that I just pointed out. Damn you, Maida! But yeah, they killed Kashuna. Hooray! At the start of this chapter, the main lord once again realizes that they should not have given the Athos the divine weapons, because they can't do shit to Nergal without him. Okay, mechanically that's incorrect, but the narrative has been pretty clear about their necessity to beat him, so whatever. So just like in Victory or Death, they have to stand there like idiots wondering if they should wait around with their thumbs up their asses. But it's okay, kids. Santa Claus has arrived and he comes bearing gifts. Hector and Eliwood have been good kids this year, so they get divine weapons, Durandal and Armats. However, Lyn is on the naughty list, so all she gets is a shitty weapon that Athos made up on the spot, although somehow it has Dragon Slayer properties. What the fuck? Why didn't she get the Murglaze? Oh, and Santa remembered that anima magic is bad against dark, so he brought a light tone to kill Nergal with. Yay!
Well, actually, I think you'll find that the magic triangle is irrelevant because Luna is better anyway.
Go back to Fire Emblem Pitfalls, you nerd. Speaking of nerds...
You know, this line is kinda jankily translated. The way Athos says it, it makes it sound like he only senses a little energy, but really, he means his capability of sensing is weaker than Nils. So what it should have said—
Who cares? I'm nearly at the end already. Stop interrupting. I just want this to end. Then Hector and Eliwood decide to send Myrnus home after bringing him along all the way here because he can't fight. That wasn't a problem for the last 20 chapters. And speaking of this, what's the deal with the random chapters he isn't deployed in anyway? Now I'm distracting myself. The lords finally enter Dragon's Gate again and meet Nergal, who, in an effort to rip off Thracia 776's final chapter, has made supermorphs based off of familiar characters. You know, shouldn't that take a lot of quintessence? Must. Hang on. Just need to finish this chapter before I can tear Nergal a new one. Now we get more anime shit, in an exchange between our heroes and antagonists about the power of friendship. Boring. Oh my god, what's wrong with your face? Nergal plays his cartoonish villain archetype straight, and says, assuming you can get past my morphs first. How embarrassing. And then he has some more lines like, I am who I am, the pain of others I do not feel, the sorrow of others does not touch me, death feeds me, death pleases me, I am the essence I consume, you fools will become corpses here because I wish it to be, rise and come forth, my servants. Now that's what I call edgy. And then Hector says, you're through here, you've sacrificed people like they were nothing but things, what does power mean if it comes at such a cost? Reminds me of Fire Emblem Heroes, honestly. Eliwood and Hector have slightly different wait, not different, I should say modified, because they're almost exactly the same besides 2 or 3 lines. They're supposed to be tailored to fit the characters, but I find the way they went about it really lazy. I mean, sure, it's true that it's kind of interesting to see the exact variations between the two in the same place, but that's only relevant if you have the script on hand. Who's gonna remember the phrasing that precisely when you have to play through the whole game again? And if they'd written it differently for both characters, that would still have conveyed the same information. And how did Nergal know Uther was dead anyway? Nobody outside of the castle knew. None of those morphs made it back. Did he read the script? Oh yeah, and then there's the boss confrontations. They're all pretty predictable, but this one between Hector and Nergal when playing Eliwood mode stood out to me. Nergal says, so you've come, Hector of Ostia. Your existence itself was my greatest miscalculation. If it had only been Eliwood, this could have been over. So, my little miscalculation, I will erase you, and leave no trace remaining. Where do I even start with this? Since when was Hector a problem for Nergal? This is made out like Nergal has some huge scheme going involving Eliwood, but Nergal didn't care about Eliwood until the Dragon's Gate fiasco. Is Nergal referring to when he sent the Black Fang after them? There's like 20 other people with Eliwood, what makes Hector so special? Didn't Nergal send the Black Fang after Hector at the start of the game for no reason at all? I'm so confused. Besides, remember that time in Cog of Destiny, when Hector put up a barrier to protect Eliwood from Nergal's attack? Oh wait, that wasn't Hector, that was Athos. Anyway, then they fight.
Of course, there's a lot of cheating in there. A lot of they fight.
And Nergal dies. Nils cries, but he doesn't know why. I guess he didn't play 19XX. Alright, and now we've got Nergal's expanded death quote. You get this if you made it to 19XX. This is a mistranslation even I know about. In the original Japanese script, they used the word Aegir instead of quintessence, but Nergal is actually supposed to say Einar, which is his wife's name if you remember that from 19XX. So the translation team mixed them up. What a fuck up!
Well, actually, in Japanese, it's not clear whether he's talking about Einar or Aegir. He says Eiru, so basically only the shared syllables, which is pretty appropriate since a major point of Nergal's character.
I told you to stop interrupting me! The point is they couldn't even bother to get the main antagonist's death quote right, and that alone is a pretty good indication that the translation team were a bunch of amateurs, or really lazy. Okay, Nergal's dead, but out of spite, he summons a bunch of dragons anyway. A lot of people think this is a huge, all-defying plot hole that contradicts everything the game has tried to establish so far, and as much as I'd love for that to be true, this is all adequately explained. Once Nergal had the Dragonstone and Ninian's essence, he could open the gate at will, and call dragons whenever he pleased. He just needed more quintessence to control them. He was planning on getting that from Eliwood and company, but now that he's dying, he doesn't care anymore, so he just calls them anyway. Not so complicated, is it? But don't worry, I'm gonna rip Nergal a new rectum about the quintessence arithmetic soon. Soon. So the dragons appear, and everyone reacts. Whoa, Hector even actually says it. He said the line, guys.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Athos makes a move on him to try and protect the world, but he's not strong enough. And then when all seems lost, boom! Instant Bramimond. He asks for everyone's power. What's he gonna do? Throw a spirit bomb? Oh god, not another shonen anime thing. Oh wait, he's just gonna revive Ninian and completely undermine the emotions we were supposed to feel regarding our tragic death. Imagine if they'd revived Albert, or Uther. That'd be so awkward and stupid, but people generally seem to be okay with this because Ninian's a Disney princess or something. I don't fucking get it. This reeks of the writers wanting to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to milk a death scene for all the drama they could, but they didn't want their death casting a shadow over the whole finale. The ending would be going from bittersweet to bittersweet, if you catch my drift. Although I should emphasize, it's the extent that they make a huge deal out of Ninian's death that makes this resurrection particularly reprehensible to me. It's like a big middle finger to anyone who cares about narrative composition. And don't fucking try to tell me that it somehow completes Nergal's arc, because that was the power he wanted. Nergal's original goal was never resurrecting the dead. It was to open the gates to get his kids back. The resurrecting dead people as morph stuff is after he's gone crazy. And then Ninian just nukes 2 dragons using ice magic or something, and faints. It's kinda stupid how Ninian can suddenly use her powers in this world, but I guess that's supposed to be part of Brahmimon's magic. And then the lords, I mean Athos, kill the last dragon and it's finally over. Okay, not really. Still gotta wrap things up. So Athos and Bramimon die, but not before they squeeze in one last member berry for FE6 with another weird prophecy thing. Then Ninian and Nils talk with Eliwood a bit about what's happened before they leave through the gate. If Eliwood and Ninian have an A support, then Ninian stays with Eliwood, but it surprisingly barely changes the conversation at all. Strangely enough, it's Nils who needs to tell Ninian to stay behind, which is really weird when you think about it. Like, shouldn't Eliwood and Ninian have had some kind of confession? God, what am I saying? Now, before I can move on to talking about how stupid Nergal is, and believe me, I really want to, there is one small thing left to address about the ending. See, there's this intriguing little fan theory, or interpretation, whatever you want to call it, that argues that the events of the ending are in fact intentionally set up to subtly portray the heroes, old and new, in a negative light, and ultimately function as a criticism of their linear approach to dealing with dragons, past and present. And if you don't understand me, it means murdering sentient creatures whom you can communicate with might not be the best way of going about solving your problems. The theory points to how everyone assumes dragons are really bad news, because of the historical stigma, and how Athos immediately assumes that the fire dragons are hostile, and moves to attack them, when they were just standing there and don't attack until you get close. As well as Ninian mentioning how the dragons were kids like them, and didn't really understand what was going on, or something. Now this theory would be kinda cool, if the script didn't directly contradict it. For one, Athos helped to found Arcadia, a village where dragons and humans peacefully coincide. Trying to claim Athos is prejudiced against dragons doesn't make any fucking sense. If he thinks dragons were gonna attack, they were probably gonna fucking attack. And the last dragon not moving is more of a mechanical thing than anything else. The vast majority of Fire Emblem final bosses don't move, and all the ones that do besides Ashnard barely move at all. Also, Nils explicitly praises the actions of the lords, saying they've made him change his mind about humans. Now he wants to cooperate peacefully with the people on the other side of the gate now. So for this theory to work, Nils would have to be lying, or be too stupid to realize what just happened. You're basically claiming the ending is so subtle that it went over Nils' head entirely. And on the subject of subtlety, seriously? This game? Main story? Subtle elements? What? If the ending was supposed to be some kind of subversive statement, then my god, they would be all in your face about it. Ninian and Nils would be like, giving the moral of the story or some shit. I shouldn't even have to go through the countless examples that support me here. The writers of this game just don't do subtle. I think the only possible legitimate part of this theory is how there's some kind of contrast between how Roy spares the final dragon boss and his dad, Eliwood, does not. I do agree that if Eliwood did it too, it would cheapen Roy's actions, but it's not like the developers took that into consideration when they fucked up the plot and implication of things constantly throughout the entire game. So if you want to believe in this theory, you end up having to interpret the script very selectively, and I think it's kind of intellectually dishonest. So we're finally done with the main story, but before I can move on to the epilogue,